Welcome to this video on adding and subtracting signed numbers. Let's begin. Suppose we have a problem such as -4 plus 6. So the first thing that we need to clarify is that the symbols, the plus sign or the minus sign, belong to whatever number the sign is in front of. So for example, we have a -4. So the negative in front of the 4 belongs to the 4. They are a whole package, just like if you think about a person's mood or attitude goes with them wherever they go, that negative sign belongs to the 4. It does not belong to the 6. Likewise, as you can see, there's a plus sign in front of the 6, so the 6 is positive. So start thinking about signs, the negative sign or the positive signs, as belonging to the numbers that they're in front of. Let's do a few more examples to really get this concept down. What if I had -4 plus -6? Well, what are we saying here? Well, we're saying that the 4 is negative, and we're also saying the 6 is negative. So we're adding two negative numbers together. Again, the signs belong to the numbers they are in front of. What if we had something like this? -4 minus 6. This is a little bit different, right? But again, if we look at the sign in front of the 4, it's negative, isn't it? So the 4 is negative. This is a subtraction sign, -6, but again, that negative sign belongs to the 6. So believe it or not, -4 minus 6 is exactly the same as writing -4 plus -6. Okay, so as you work these problems with adding and subtracting sign numbers, get used to thinking of the sign in front of the number as belonging to that number. Okay, it's really important that for example, let's say I have something like this. Let's say I have just 4 minus 6, right? It's really important that you understand that this negative sign does not belong to the 4. If I look at in front of the 4, there's nothing there. So that implies that the 4 itself is positive. So the way I would think about this is that it's a positive 4 and a -6. In fact, if I wanted to, I could rewrite this as 4 and -6. Again, the 4 itself is positive, the 6 is negative. So that is our first rule, our first guideline as we think about adding and subtracting signed numbers. Okay? I've also sort of accidentally introduced this second concept, right, which is that you can rewrite subtraction as adding a negative. Okay, so again, as you can see here in the previous examples, I rewrote -6 or -6 as plus a -6. So this is another way that you can rewrite and re-express problems to help yourself understand what the problem is really asking. Okay, we've also sort of, again, accidentally introduced this concept that if there is no sign in front of a number, for example, when I had 4 minus 6, right, there is no sign in front of the 4, then the implication is that it is a positive 4. Okay, so please keep all of these ideas, these concepts in mind, because they're really going to help you understand what we're doing as we add and subtract signed numbers. Okay, so the last rule, this is one I haven't introduced yet, is that minus a negative is the same as plus a positive. So what do I mean by minus a negative? Well, let's say I have 10 minus -5. So it might be written like this. You might also see it looking like this, 10 minus parentheses -5. These are equivalent expressions. Sometimes we just add the parentheses in, just to clarify so that you can see that there really are two negative signs there and that it's not, I don't know, like a pencil mark or a scratch on the paper, right? We really do mean that there's two negative signs next to each other without a number in between. That's really what we mean. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit more later, but right now all you need to know is that minus a negative is the same as plus a positive. So anytime you see something that looks like this, minus a negative, whichever way it's written, we actually mean 10 plus 5. And of course, 10 plus 5 is 15. Okay, so these are the four rules, guidelines, ways of understanding adding and subtracting sign numbers that we're going to be applying as we move forward. All right, let's keep going. So as you can see from this chart here, we have several ways to understand these problems. So the first column says that we can rewrite it. Okay, so let's do that because we've already sort of discussed this, right? We said that 6 plus 4, well, there's not really much room for rewriting, right? It's a positive 6 plus a positive 4. If you want, you could put a positive sign in front of the 6. Okay, again, this isn't super useful for this particular problem. What about 6 minus 4? Well, again, if you want to, if it helps you, you could rewrite it as 6 plus negative 4. Again, optionally, you could put this in parentheses. It's up to you. The point that we're trying to drive home here is that negative sign belongs to and is completely attached to and part of the 4. Okay? The 4 isn't a 4 anymore. It's now a negative 4. Okay, likewise for number 3, we have 4 minus 6. Again, that negative sign belongs to the 6. The 6 is not a 6 anymore. Now it is a negative number. So again, if you desire to, if it helps you get clarity and understanding about these problems, you could rewrite it as 4 plus negative 6. Okay, the last problem, I guess you could rewrite it. I don't really know how, because we already have a negative sign in front of the 6, and we have a positive sign in front of the 4. So when I say rewrite, again, this is just a tool, okay? And as you can see from this chart, we're going to have 3 tools. So you can rewrite things if that helps you. We're going to also learn how to think about adding and subtracting signed numbers in terms of money. And we're also going to learn what's called the SSSDDD method. And of course, I haven't taught it to you yet, so it's not going to make sense yet. Okay, so as you can see, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. If I go to the next chart, you can see that there's a few more problems here. So let's finish the rewrite column before we move on. So the rewrite, again, not much to do here, right? Both numbers already have a sign in front of them. How about number 6, though? So I would rewrite that, if I could rewrite this as negative 6 plus a negative 4. Again, only do this if it helps you, okay? You don't have to do this. The problems where you absolutely do have to rewrite it, though, are number 7 and number 8. Okay, so if we go back a few slides here, remember, this last rule, minus a negative is the same as plus a positive, okay? So if I go look at number 7, is 6 minus negative 4. Okay, I don't have an option here. I have to rewrite this. I have to rewrite it as 6 plus positive 4, or more simply, right, just 6 plus 4. Okay. And last but not least, I have negative 6 minus negative 4. Again, I have to rewrite this before I move on. I have to rewrite it as negative 6 plus positive 4. So negative 6 plus 4. Okay, so that is my rewrite method. So I'm going to go back here to number 1. Okay, so we've talked about our rewrite method. Now I'm going to explain these, contextualize these problems, if you will, in terms of money. So before I do that, though, let's actually evaluate these problems. So I have 6 plus 4. Remember, at least in this course, you can always use your calculator, right? But you can probably also do this in your head. 6 plus 4 is 10. Right? And it makes sense that if you have 2 positive numbers, right, you're going to add them together to get a larger positive number. Again, another way to understand that is in terms of money, which is something that most of us deal with every day and that we can usually relate to. So if I were to interpret this problem in terms of money, this means that I have $6 and then I get 4 more. So if I have $6 and then I have 4 more, of course, now I have $10. Okay. So let's do number 2. So we have 6 plus negative 4, or 6 minus 4. Again, you probably could do a problem like this before you ever took this class or ever met me, right? And we know that 6 minus 4, or 6 plus negative 4, is equal to 2. Okay? How could I explain that to myself and make it make sense in terms of money? Well, remember, anytime with money you have a positive number, positive numbers may represent money that you have or that you receive. Kind of makes sense, right? If you're an accountant and you had like a spreadsheet, right, any number that is income, or if you look at like your bank statement, right, positive numbers are money that you earned, that you either deposit in your account, or maybe your work is like a direct deposit for you, right? If you have a negative number in your bank account, right, that means that that's money that they're taking away. You probably spent it somehow. Maybe you paid your electric bill, right? So again, negative numbers mean that you're spending money or that you owe money. Positive integers mean money that you have or receive. Okay? So we add money that we have or receive, and we subtract money that we owe or we spend. Okay, so at the end of our accounting journey, right, after we like combine all the numbers, if we end up with a negative number, that means that we owe money, or conversely, if we owe money, that means that the answer should be negative, right? If after we put everything together that we find out that we have money left over, we've paid all of our bills, for example, right, and we have extra money, right, that means we have a positive number. Okay, so let's go back to number 2. So again, we have 6 minus 4 or 6 plus negative 4. Those are equivalent expressions. So since the 6 is positive, that means I have $6. Since the 4 is negative, or since the 4 is being subtracted, that means that I am spending $4. So if I have 6, I spend 4, right? That means I have $2 left over. Okay, again, that's why it is positive, right? Because notice the word have, right? I have $10, so this is a positive 10. I have $2, it's a positive 2. Okay, at this point, I really want to encourage you to pause this video, see if you can do some of these examples on your own as far as interpreting them in terms of money. This is really good practice. Again, you just really want to understand and contextualize these problems so that they make sense to you, so that you don't always have to type them into a calculator. Okay, let's look at number 3. So this time, again, we have 4 minus 6, or if you want to think about it, it's 4 plus negative 6. Okay, so this is the part where sometimes students get a little bit confused about, well, is the answer positive or negative? I'm not sure, right? So let's think about it in terms of money. So that 4, as you can see, there's nothing in front of the 4. That means that we have a positive 4. We have $4. However, right, we don't, we start with $4, but then we spend what? We spend $6. Right? And in the real world, just like in this problem, you can spend more money than you have, and then you acquire debt, right? So if you spend more than you have, right, then that means you're in debt. Most of us have some sort of debt, maybe a car payment, maybe a mortgage, right? Maybe you're just paying off your laptop, whatever, right? So in this problem, it says that we owe $2. Okay, and remember, at the end of a problem, if we find out that we owe money, what does that mean? That means that we have a negative number. Okay, number 4. If you look at number 3 and 4, you might notice, right, this is 4 plus negative 6. This is negative 6 plus 4. These are actually the same exact problem. However, even though we're going to get the same number, we'll start out a little bit differently, right, because we're going to start out explaining the negative 6 first. So we start out with a debt of $6, right? Then we get $4. So the implication is that as soon as I have positive money, it has to go to pay off that debt. I know that in real life that's not true, but that's what we're going to imagine in this problem. Okay? So I owe $6, I pay $4, right? But I haven't paid off my whole debt, right? I still owe $2. So again, that would mean that I have a negative 2. All right, let's do the next 4. So if we look at number 5, again, we have negative 4 plus 6. So I start out owing $4, okay, and then I get 6. Remember, the implication is that I have to use that money to pay off those $4. But even after I pay off my debt, I still have how much left over? Well, I still have $2. So again, this means that I have a positive 2 left over. All right, number 6. Okay, this one, right, notice that both numbers are negative. That means that I owe 6 and then I borrow 4 more, right? If I keep borrowing money, I'm going to get further and further in debt, meaning that I'm going to get a larger and larger negative number. So if I borrow 6 and then I borrow 4, right, I have now borrowed $10. Remember, anything you borrow or anything you owe, that is going to be a negative number. All right, number 7 and number 8, notice we are going to be working from this rewritten problem. We are not going to start with the original problem. So with number 7, it started out as 6 minus negative 4. Now we're dealing with 6 plus 4. So if I interpret that, it just means that we started with $6 and then we get 4 more. Okay, this is actually identical, I believe, to number 1. It's the same thing once we rewrite it. But again, we have to take a minute and rewrite it first. Okay, number 8, again, we're working with the rewritten form, which is negative 6 plus 4, and I believe that's the identical to number 4 here, negative 6 plus 4. So the interpretation is going to be the same. I start out owing $6, I pay back $4 of that debt, but I'm still in debt, right? I still owe whoever $2. Okay, so again, rewriting it can help you. Thinking about it in terms of money can also help you. And I want to introduce you to a third way of understanding it, and that's the SSS-DDD method. So here is what they're calling the triple method. Okay, the triple method says that if you start out with 2 numbers that have the same signs, then you just sum the numbers, the absolute values. Just ignore the signs and just add the numbers themselves. Okay? Then the sign of the answer is going to be the same as the original numbers. So let's just pause there. We're going to get to the DDD part in a minute. Let's just pause there and apply this to any of those 8 problems that seem to have the same sign. Okay? So let's look at number 1, 6 plus 4. Do both of those numbers have the same sign? They do, right? In fact, they're both positive. Okay? So to interpret that, I would say that they have the same sign. Therefore, I'm going to sum them. 6 plus 4 is 10. Okay? Since 6 and 4 are both positive, then my final answer must also be positive. So I want to pause here and just remind you, I would strongly recommend picking one of these methods. If rewriting it helps you, that's fine. If the money method helps you, that's fine. If the SSS-DDD method helps you, then that's fine too. Okay? I would not try to master necessarily all of these, maybe 2, but I would really just pick one that helps you the most. All right, let's look at number 2. So now we have 6 minus 4. 6 minus 4, notice these are opposite signs. This is plus and that's minus. So this is not going to be SSS, this is going to be DDD. So we're going to skip over it. Number 3, same thing, right? We have a plus here and a minus here. Okay, so they're going to be opposite signs. Same with number 4. Okay, same with number 5. Okay, so now let's look at number 6. If I look at number 6, I have a negative 6 minus 4 or a negative 6 plus negative 4. Again, here now I can see that they both have the same sign. Okay, since they have the same sign, I'm going to add them. 6 plus 4, ignoring those signs, 6 plus 4 is 10. Okay, then to figure out the sign of the answer, well, both numbers are negative. Therefore, that means that the sign of my final answer is also negative. So I know that negative 6 plus negative 4 is negative 10. Okay, and then lastly, number 7, I think that's the last one that has the same sign. Okay, we can see that they're both positive from our rewrite. We have 6 plus 4, and again, we already did that one. We said that the sum is 10. The answer is positive because both numbers in the problem are positive. All right, so let's go through and look at the DDD method now. Okay, so D stands for different signs. That means one of your numbers is positive and the other one is negative. So if you're dealing with this case, that we find the difference between the 2 numbers, we again kind of ignore the signs and we just take the larger number and subtract from that the smaller number. But we still have to figure out, okay, well, what is the sign of our final answer, right? And that depends on which of those 2 numbers has the larger absolute value. So in other words, if the larger number is negative, right, then the answer is negative. If the larger number is positive, then the answer is going to be positive. So let's apply this and try to make sense of this. So if we go back to number 2, right, again, we can see that we have 6 minus 4 or 6 plus negative 4. Again, we already said that they have different signs. So we have to find the difference. So 6 minus 4 is 2. Okay, and then we know that the dominant number is 6. Well, since the 6 is positive, that means the final answer is also positive. All right, for number 3, we have 4 minus 6. Again, we know that we have opposite signs or different signs. Okay, so again, 6 minus 4, we just ignore the signs and we just take the larger number and subtract off the smaller number. So we know that 6 minus 4 is 2. Then we ask ourselves the question, okay, fine, it's 2. Is it a positive or a negative 2? Well, the dominant term, right, which one is bigger, the 4 or the 6, if you take just the absolute value, right, 6 is bigger than 4, and as you can see, that 6 is negative. Remember, I said the negative sign belongs to the 6. So since the dominant term is negative, then the final answer will be negative, which is what we got using the other methods. The final answer is negative 2. Again, I want to encourage you to pause this video and see if you can do some of these other problems on your own. Okay, number 4. Again, we have negative 6 plus 4. Remember, 3 and 4 are actually identical, right? So we have different signs. So we know the difference between 6 and 4 is 2. Okay, and this time, just like number 3, the dominant term was that negative 6. Okay, so that since the larger number is negative, that means my final answer will also be negative. All right, number 5, we have negative 4 plus 6. Again, we have different signs, right? And we already know, we've said this a million times, that 6 minus 4 is 2. Okay, so then we just have to figure out, okay, well, is the answer positive or negative? Well, the dominant term is 6 because 6 is bigger than 4. As you can see, 6 is positive, therefore our final answer would also be positive, which again is what we already got here. Okay, so then we go to our last problem, that's number 8. Again, we have different signs, right? One is negative, one is positive. And again, we already know that 6 minus 4 is 2. Now we just have to figure out, is the answer positive or negative? Okay, our dominant term, right, 6 is bigger than 4, so our dominant term, as you can see here, is negative. Therefore, our final answer must also be negative.